Okay, we appear to be live here. I want to welcome the new sponsor to the podcast, Liquid Death Canned Water. It's mountain water in a can, and it's delicious. I love it, and they're paying me a lot of money to say that. So here you go. That comes both in regular and sparkling. I haven't had the sparkling yet, but it's in the fridge, and I'm going to try that next. Hey, it's good water, and their ad campaigns are just absolutely bonkers. So check it out. I'm also drinking beer because I had a rough day at work. So I got the beer and I got the water chaser, and that's the way it's going to go. So I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to get my mic fixed. I'm glad to get my computer fixed because it had a bad USB port. But I'm really glad to be talking to comedians again because that's what this thing's all about. And that's what I want to do. So today, my guest he's a Michigan comedian, and he labels himself both as a clean comedian and a horrible person. So I want to talk a little bit about that branding. And he's also a little closer to my age than some of the people I talk to, still younger, and has a lot better hair. But he's been performing around Michigan, Indiana, and if you go to his website, you will see reviews from everywhere from businesses to churches and everywhere in between about his professionalism and how good of a comedian he is. Somebody I've been wanting to talk to for a while. And he's been on the talk show at least once, I think maybe twice, but he's been on the talk show as well. It's Brian Atkinson.
Hey,
Hey,
Scott.
Brian.
Hey,
I'm
how
going to
are
move
you?
you over here.
Oh,
I tell
okay.
you what, your voice, every time I hear your voice, I just feel a little bit better about life and a little bit jealous that I don't have it.
My gosh, you're right.
So
Thanks.
back when I did the Oskay episode, I told him that when I was on hiatus that I listened back to a few of my shows, and that's hard for me to do because I don't like my voice.
Oh,
But I listened back, and I am just super serious on these things, and just not a lot of fun. So I'm trying to loosen up a little bit
yeah.
more and still get the message across. So if I go over the line, let me
Oh,
know. If I'm too dry, let me know.
okay. All right. I'll watch out for those two sides of that.
Yeah.
Keep you sliding down the razor blade of life. Got it. All
But
right.
I've admired your comedy prowess for a while, and I've always kept up with you since we became friends on Facebook, and just really like your style and the fact that you can make people laugh without doing the blue stuff
Oh,
and
so
all
you're
that.
the one.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Got it. Nice. I was wondering who liked my stuff. Nice.
Yeah, it's me. Yeah, it's that one guy that used to live in Indiana. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's me.
Right.
But
Yeah, I just have one quick bone to pick with you
okay.
because I got a little feature gig in beautiful downtown Mishawaka, Indiana a couple of months
Oh,
ago, and it just happened to be like you were moving that week
yeah,
and
I
you
re I
couldn't,
remember
and I was
that.
like,
Yeah,
I still want to see you. And you were like, I'm moving, I can't. I'm like, I'm up the street.
yeah,
And yeah, that was just not going to work. But that was the Smokehouse Brew Pub.
yeah,
Terrific venue. So comics, if you're out there listening and stuff, or if you are the local to Mishawaka, Indiana, make sure that you support their Tuesday night comedy night. You get a great show. It's a free show. Get yourselves a great dinner and some drinks and enjoy that in Mishawaka, Indiana.
yeah.
That's my only little plug there because they do a
There you
great job.
go. It's actually Smokestack, but well,
Smokestack.
yeah, yeah.
See. Thank you for
That
fixing me on that. Okay,
that that
take two.
that used
Smokestack Brew.
right.
Yeah, they do a
That used to
great
be a
job
funny
there.
bone.
Smokestack Brew. Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go.
that used to be a funny bone
Oh,
back in
really?
the day. So Funny
Oh,
Bone used to be at the mall, and then they moved
yeah.
there, and then they moved out, and that was vacant for a while. And
Oh,
before it was Funny Bone, it was Boiler House Pictures, which
oh,
they
wow.
they ran movies like 6 months after they did their
Second run movies. Yeah.
original run. So I got to see Pulp Fiction like 3 times there. So,
On purpose.
yes,
Wow.
yeah, and it smelled bad.
Oh, perfect. That's that's as a movie theater should be. The
Yeah.
floor should be covered in Cinemuck, and there should be a vaporous apparition in the place. It just smells there. No. Yeah.
Well, as I
Yeah.
said Brian, I really like your style, but I wanna know, where you got it and when you started, because that's one thing that I haven't learned from you yet
Oh.
is when you started doing stand-up.
Wow. So I've been doing stand-up about 3 years.
Okay.
Um,
Wow.
and I try to say it like that now. I got some good advice from a comic because I had kind of hemmed and hawed around idea. Well, I worked in radio for a long time and I've always been a performer and so
Mhm.
on. And they're like, "Shut up. How long have you been doing stand up?" I said, "Yeah, okay, 3 years." Um, and a, a lot of people will look at my stage presence and listen to my voice and so on, anything that I say, because it comes with the gravitas that I
Uh-huh.
bring with, I'm making fun of myself. Please understand that. Everything that comes out of my mouth sounds like I'm speaking with authority. It sounds like I'm just, oh yeah, you
Mhm.
better listen to this guy. So I'm very comfortable on stage. I'd much rather be on stage than anywhere else. I'm very uncomfortable in a car with one other person
Yeah.
on a road trip. That's hell for me.
Uh-huh.
Whereas, except my wife. My wife is the exception to any of these rules. She and I are great in the car for, 10, 12 hours to go visit her family, whatever it takes. But if somebody's like, "Hey, let's drive 6 hours and go to a show together," I'm like, "Can you just drive your own car?"
Yeah.
Because yeah, I'm a real extrovert, and you're not a big enough audience for me to feel comfortable.
Uh-huh.
So, where I'm most comfortable is on a stage, big crowd, everybody's paying attention to me, and because I'm comfortable there, most comfortable there, I don't struggle with, stage fright. I don't struggle with, not being myself on stage. The
Mhm.
thing I do struggle with is that myself, sounds like this, and so people tend not to like, wait, he's putting on an act. He's putting on a show. He's putting on something like that.
Yeah.
So I've had to kind of craft some things that self-deprecating to make sure that people know I know what I sound like. And
Yeah.
I know that you think I'm trying to sell you something for just 1995 and 5 easy payments, but wait, there's more.
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't take much for me to ramp up like that. And so if I can, kind of let the audience off the hook like that, it that's a step to make me more relatable and make sure that they're not hung up on, is he doing a commercial right now, or is
Yeah.
yeah. And as I've worked that in, I've had much better results, and I'm very happy with how that's going.
And
Um,
you have vocal range.
oh
I've
sure,
watched your stuff, so you can go high when
yeah,
you're doing a conversation and
yeah,
things like that. So, you can definitely change it up, but I can see how that could be a little bit difficult to overcome because you are a radio voice, you're a voiceover
yeah.
voice type guy.
The announcer voice is just how it comes out. I can do a lot of character voices, so when people look at me for voiceover work, it's either characters or announcer. Nobody wants me for the average guy. So you could
Mhm,
get voiceover work because that's what people are hiring right now. They
mhm.
want somebody who sounds like the guy up the street. They want they that's what everybody's hiring for right now.
Right.
Whereas my voice, they're like announcer, announcer, announce. They're swiping left like crazy. Whereas if they need character voice, yeah, well, I could do that, and I can do a lot
Uh-huh.
of different voices, and I can do impressions and things like that. So I've also started adding some of that in my act uh, to say, well, that's my sweet spot, so why not use it? And I've been
Yeah.
reluctant to because I didn't want to be just the voice guy. But
Right.
at
Right.
this stage, I'm 3 years in. What is it? You're supposed to put 10 years in before are even remotely experienced. And
Mhm.
so, like, yeah, so I've got some time before I kind of limit myself to say I'm going to not do these things or always do this or whatever.
Right.
But
And
yeah,
I do feel like even though you're 3 years in, I'm a little surprised that you're only 3 years in. So, because you do have the stage presence. You're not you aren't nervous up there, and it's you can tell. I mean, I watched all the clips I could find of you, and um, you you definitely don't have a problem with that. And I'm in a similar situation. I've always spoken publicly anyway, doing presentations and things
Mhm.
like that. And I'm like you in that I'm tough. It's hard for me to be in a car with somebody unless we're not doing any small talk at all. We have to be
Right.
talking about a particular subject because
Yes.
I absolutely despise small talk, and my area of interest is so narrow. I mean, let's talk about X-Files and horror movies. That's
Okay.
really,
All right.
and music. That's all I got.
Okay.
So
But even your music, if I remember correctly, you're a little more like it's music of this genre between these years, and
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I do branch out, but I'm everywhere from metal to cowpunk. Whatever I decide I like, and fortunately my wife's very patient and goes along with
Oh,
me.
yeah.
But yeah, but you know, one so approaching comedy later in life,
Yeah.
everybody told you to do it, so you just did it.
Actually,
What was
no.
it? Yeah.
Nobody
Okay.
said, you should be a comedian. Nobody
Uh-huh.
said that. Um, I did. I
Yeah.
I like I wanna do this. And, God bless my wife, Holly. She, for my 50th birthday, bought me Steve Martin's masterclass.
Uh-huh.
So it was an online class, and it was
Yeah.
just it basically walked through, this is what comedy structures are, and here's
Mhm.
things that you can focus on, and there was some, like, general advice in there, and I went through it, and I went, "Yeah, I have to do this." Like I said, I
Okay.
worked in radio for a while. You kinda have to be funny on the radio sometimes, and then not doing news, though I learned that the hard way. I
Uh-huh.
got I got fired from a news station for laughing after a news story that I was reading. There were extenuating circumstances.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say that where was I going? Oh, I got asked by some local club owners and things like that. Hey, will you come in and be the MC of this show we're doing? And it wasn't much more than an open mic and stuff like that. So I would go in
Mhm.
and host essentially, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was
Mhm.
just being the radio guy,
Mhm.
and I had a couple of things that I would do regularly for material that I had at the time.
Mhm.
And so I did that for a little while, but not in a way that was all that meaningful.
Right.
So I had a taste of it. So once I got through Steve Martin's masterclass, I was like, yeah, I absolutely have to do this. And then I signed up for Gilda's Laugh Fest here in Grand Rapids.
Oh, cool.
And they had, and I don't do this every year, but they did it that particular year. It was the first timers showcase. And I said, I have a little experience, but they're like, oh, yeah, you're fine. You absolutely sign up for this.
Uh-huh.
So I signed up, and then I'm like, well, I wrote some material. I need to go find an open mic to do this. And then I found the world of the different Facebook comedy groups. I just, kind of searched for, is there any place and so on. And the people at Laugh Fest had said, hey, there's a bunch of open mics around town where you can go. And
Uh-huh.
okay, so I looked some up, I found some, and I did my first open mic the night before Thanksgiving. So it's coming up on 3 years ago. And and it's supposed to be like, this is the biggest bar night of the year. And I had a few friends came with me who are both pastors and their adult children and my wife. And we
Uh-huh.
went, and I just, from working in radio, and I simply don't talk with expletives
Yeah.
in my wording, so it
Mhm.
doesn't occur to me to talk that way. And there's certain topics that I just don't discuss in public. So it wasn't going to be that. It was going to be clean comedy.
Mhm.
But it wasn't so much on purpose as it was that's just how I am.
Mhm.
And so I got there, and I'm there with these friends and my wife, and the level of dirty comedy, blue comedy, filthy comedy was so high.
Yeah.
It, part of what we do as comedians is we create tension and then release it.
Yeah.
And for us, I'm there with two pastors and their adult children and my wife. And the tension is like, oh, yeah. Everything the other people who are there, who are some of my friends now,
Yeah.
are,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
so it was, it's not like I don't appreciate what they do. Some of it's just beautifully crafted. And then some people just go up there and say words
Yeah.
without anything to go with it.
Yeah.
And in this case, it was a mix of that. Some of the stuff was really funny. Some of it was absolutely not. And that tension release, I was really laughing the whole time, partially out of embarrassment for my friends and
Uh-huh.
and my
Yeah.
my wife. But it was really good for my wife to go to that show that first time and see, oh, that's what going to comedy shows is going to be like. I don't need to ever do that again. Unless you're doing a clean show somewhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's great. So I have as a partner with Aaron Sorrells, who says hi. He asked me to make sure I said hi to you.
Hey, Aaron.
So we have a business, Clean Comedy Time, and we do shows that are clean. We bring comedians from all over doing clean material. So they're not necessarily clean comics. They do clean material. And we corporate events, fundraisers, shows, churches, whatever, whoever wants that level of clean. So you've got your kind of your TV clean, your corporate clean, your church clean, and then there's a whole other level that we just did in early July. That is church campground clean with children in the audience.
Yeah,
that's a whole other level, and we had a great time. Had a great show. And the comics that we brought along, it was me and Aaron, of course. Abby Lemke, she's terrific. She's really great at the, like that awkward early 20s. And so there was just a pile of 13, 14-year-old girls sitting right up front, and they just grabbed onto her like she was their older sister, and we had a great time. And then we had Cam Big Fella Rowe, 6'9" guy. So he's a monster of a man, and he was great. We all had a really great time. The campers really enjoyed it. And I had been there before, so I could, kind of prep the comics. I said, this is a different level of clean.
Yeah.
It's topical, it's language, it's words that you won't think that are going to be the issue. The first time I did a show there, they had seen a video of me talking about an audition I had with the Chicago Cubs to be the PA announcer. This is a true story. I got selected as a finalist from a YouTube video I submitted.
Wow.
I was one of 25 people who got to go to the park, and there was a whole publicity thing about it. I wasn't going to get the job, but after I called a game from the booth with Gary the organist, and it was, great. It was a wonderful time in one of my favorite places in the whole wide world. I got to hear my voice ringing out over Wrigley Field. Then they put me down to HR and asked me baseball questions. They said, what are 3 ways that a batter can get to first base? And I said, that's easy. You can get a single, you can get a walk or base on balls, and get hit by a pitch. Technically, in the right circumstance, you can steal first. But the way that I think everybody forgets about is put on some light music, open a bottle of wine, dim the lights, and you'll be on first base before you know it. That's a favorite bit of mine. And they had seen that, and they said, hey, you do this thing about getting to first base. Can you not do that? I said, of course, I'm happy to edit like that. Please help me understand why, so that I can think about the rest of my act stuff you haven't seen. Oh, yeah. It's foreplay.
Yeah.
And in my head, I went, I'm so sorry you think that's foreplay.
Yeah.
And then I was going, oh, okay, got it. All right. So it's that level. So within clean comedy, there's all of those different levels. And I'd like to think that, the stuff that I do most of the time can play in any of those situations. And I've got specific stuff that I do for churches. And whenever I do a corporate job, I always meet with them for a couple hours to sit down, give me a tour, talk to me about who's going to be there, who's really funny in your audience, who's, does the CEO think they're a comedian?
Mhm.
All that kind of stuff. So you get that kind of stuff so that you go up there and you're immediately identifying with the people who are in the room. They feel like, oh, he knows who we are. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I like to do that kind of thing. And for fundraisers, I spent a lot of my prior to this professional career in ministry organizations. So I'm accustomed to fundraising speak and having to ask for a donation and things like
Mhm.
that. So I like to do things like that, and I always offer that as a, hey, if as you're doing this fundraiser, if you need somebody else to ask for the money besides you, I can do that. I
Yeah.
can make that part of what I do, and so there's those kinds of things. So it's been a really good, just natural progression for me. But 3 years ago, it was just a weird Wednesday night with a room full of people who were just cussing and talking about um, committing unspeakable acts in, in front of their computer. Um, and so I imagine that their lives have been fairly uninterrupted by the whole pandemic thing.
Yeah, no doubt. And, I really respect somebody who leans into who they are, because you could try to do an R-rated
Oh yeah,
thing.
I can. It's in
Yeah,
there.
yeah, and it probably wouldn't come off as being true to you.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I've decided, although my act is pretty darn clean, I've decided not to label myself as a clean comic,
Right.
because I've written a whole lot of really not, I don't want to say it's dirty, but I have to use curse words in
Uh-huh.
order to get the point across.
Yeah.
And it goes into subjects of, boomers being out of touch and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I've got that there,
Yeah.
but when you see me on stage, it's kind of like seeing you. It's not. I'm like you know, eh,
Well, we look like
I'm
somebody's.
like the old gym
Yeah.
teacher, or
Yeah.
something. Like, it's not somebody you expect to hear the f bomb out of.
Right.
And it's funny that you have gotten the respect of people who do blue stuff. Say like an Adam Deggy. He was on the show.
Yeah.
He likes you.
Oh,
So
I'll have to remember that.
yeah,
Thanks, Adam.
yeah. But it's kind of difficult to get that respect. First of all, when you're a little bit older, and second off, when you decide that you're going to really lean into the clean stuff,
Yeah.
and then at first they're a little bit standoffish. I don't know if this happened to you. They're a little bit
Sure.
standoffish, and then they come to you and say, "How can I make this joke
Yes.
clean?"
Oh,
Because
I love that conversation.
yeah,
Yeah. Um, Thank you. I I like Adam too. I think I as you said, I do lean into clean. I've actually trimmed down the clean branding on my website a bit, where I
Mhm,
would say I'm a clean comedian. I don't use that phrase anymore.
mhm,
I am a clean comedian, but it's not the phrase I use because um I want to bring um when it comes to clean comedy, there's a kind of a bringing a lightness into places that are often dark.
yeah,
So the comedy I do, some of it gets pretty dark,
mhm,
um, especially with recent events and stuff. But likewise, then when I'm in places that are very light and like churches and things like that, I'll bring the darkness there as
mhm.
well, just to try to open that up. Hey, Mattopoly 83, Matt Harper says, "Hi, Brian. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I'm not even
Thanks for
watching
listening."
chat.
Yeah, I just saw it. I
I'm
just happen to
very
know Matt, so thanks for listening. Um,
Hey, everybody that's watching, thanks.
yeah, thanks a
I
lot.
get into the interview, so I don't even watch chat much.
Yeah. But the friends that I have who work particularly dirty, and I'm going to go ahead and name him. I'm going to name John Batch.
Uh-huh.
He and a few other partners have developed a company called Demented Peach Productions.
Uh-huh.
They've been doing outdoor shows all summer. They just did their final one for the summer last week. I was able to go to that, which was great. They put together a great show. They're doing open mics to recruit people. They're already forecasting into shows for the future. They do a great job. But if you ever see John perform, his filthiness is art.
Yeah.
And I absolutely respect that. And I told him so.
Right.
And I've just said, I want to bring that level of creativity and art to the clean that I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And I think, and I don't know how he really feels about me, of course, but I would hope that that he's got that same idea that it's like, yeah, I think Brian's funny. I like him. It's just, he works from this side of it and I work from that side.
Right.
But I think one of the reasons that if you work clean, that you run into some resistance, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It's the Christian thing or the church thing, or
Mm-hmm.
people make assumptions of who you are and what you believe and how you want to treat other people and so on. And I am a person of faith. I've just always been, and it's a important part of my life. But I also understand that my first job is to be loving to people. So
Mm.
I hope I will never be in a situation where I'm saying, hey, you need to change your language or you need to change the topics. I would never do that.
Right.
I have a
Right.
great appreciation for it. If we
Yeah.
got anything out of how Jesus lived his life when he was walking around here on earth, was that he hung out with the people who were the unexpected,
Yes.
and the people who were very religious are the only ones that he tore a new one for.
Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to say that I'm like Jesus. I'm just trying to say I hope I can approach that.
Yeah.
And so when I'm not doing clean comedy time, I don't do a lot of church shows on my own. I'm happy to.
Mm-hmm.
But probably more along the lines of a more progressive church, a church that's not as stayed in traditions and
Mm-hmm.
things, that they're a little bit more forward thinking. And I would say, as I move, geographically south and get down to where you live now, I probably have very few churches where they would be welcoming to me.
Yeah.
Up north here, there's a few more.
Yeah. They're more Old Testament. Yeah.
Yeah, if you will. Nice. Yeah. And yeah, so I think there's that kind of assumption. If you work clean, it must be because of this.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's a part of it for sure, but it's also because that's just how I talk. And it's also
Yeah.
because after working in radio for about 12 years, I can't say certain words in front of a live mic.
Yeah.
There's nothing in my brain that would allow that to happen, and
Right.
it's not part of my normal conversation. So
Yeah.
like you said earlier, if I did a blues set or use particular language, it would come off as not genuine. Like,
Yeah.
why is he
Insincere.
saying that?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I did one show here in Grand Rapids at the Tip Top Bar and Grill. I'm pretty sure is a guy named Michael Bustler. He was hosting, and he introduced me as your junior high vice principal. And I'm like, there you go. Now I know what I look like. Okay, thank you, Mike. Yeah, Iron Mike, is king of the nicknames. So
Yeah.
I
There's
took
one
that.
thing.
I just took it as very genuine. It's like, that's how he
Yeah.
sees me. Awesome. Let me lean into
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, just be it. And
Mhm.
and the funny thing is I've noticed that a clean comic in a sea of dirty comics is
Mhm.
almost a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's different.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing a show this coming Saturday. I know it's not time to plug things yet, but the Ambrosia Theater in Grand Rapids, you can Google it and find it and stuff, and I'll promote it as well here in a bit. But the show, I will be that palate cleanser.
Yeah.
So I'll be, kind of an opening act.
Mhm.
So the audience kind of gets into the rhythm of me, and then the headliner is going to come on, and he's very dirty and he's
Hmm.
very high energy, and so we will be very different from each other, and
Hmm.
so I think the audience will respond really well to that because they'll get into my rhythm and then get shaken and jerked out of
Yeah.
it by another guy who they'll identify with, and it'll be terrific. So
Right,
I'm really
right.
looking forward to that.
And I like you, I appreciate all types of humor as long as it's funny and as
Yeah,
long as it's well done. It
yeah.
doesn't matter what they say, but I think we're both fortunate in that we've got, Jim Gaffigan, Nate
Mhm.
Bargatze, people like that are kind of they're
Yeah,
normalizing clean comedy
yeah,
again.
for
And
sure.
that's very helpful because you know the funny thing is you get these guys on your side.
Yeah.
They're I had a situation when I was doing an open mic, and this was when I was up in South Bend. A bunch of Notre Dame kids came in, and I was, of course, not cursing, and I think I said the word poop or something like that,
Oh boy.
and
Oh.
somebody in the audience said, "You can say shit," and one of my comedy friends totally got on her and said, "He doesn't do that,"
Yeah.
and I
No,
could hear it.
he actually can't. He's
Yeah.
incapable of saying that.
Yeah, but the funny thing is in normal life, if I type the word F into my phone,
Oh,
it's
of
the
course.
F bomb. I mean, I
Yep.
swear very profusely in normal life, but on the stage, I can totally turn it off, and it fits who I am. But enough about me.
Oh, well, sure.
But in thinking about starting later in life is definitely, I think we get advantages and I think we get disadvantages. First
Sure.
of all, we've lived some life,
Yep.
and having a bad set or something like that
Yeah.
really doesn't bother us as much as a young person.
Yeah.
But the disadvantage is we're an over 50 person
Yep.
in a sea of 20 somethings.
Yeah.
um and-
So, just let me pause for a second. So, Scott, have a bad set.
uh-huh.
So you've had a bad set?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm kidding. Yeah, we've all had them. That is the number one rule of comedy is failure.
Yeah.
You're going to fail. You're going to fail tragically, tremendously. You know, it's going to be hyperbolically extraordinary, and
uh,
you're not going to believe it. You're going to walk off the stage like, I can't believe that material that I know so well just did that,
yeah.
and yeah. So that's going to happen. So of course, but you're absolutely right. At our age, it's just not a big a deal, and I think
Mhm.
it's because the percentage of our life that was just given to that. So it's
So
math.
much
It's a
more.
small percentage of our life. It's like pshaw, no big deal.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like it just doesn't even, I mean, you're upset for maybe a couple seconds,
Yeah,
and you're like,
yeah. I'm like,
okay,
okay,
okay, what am I doing tomorrow?
yeah. What am I going to do differently next time?
Yeah,
For sure.
it doesn't really even register as a failure when you've done, 10, 15 minutes or whatever.
Yeah,
I think that percentage analogy is very good. And
yeah.
but yeah, I now let's think about y- people who get into comedy. Had some people that they admired when they were
Sure.
younger and stuff like that. Who are the people that you really looked up to when you were just digging comedy as a connoisseur?
Yeah. Um, well, it's not fashionable anymore, but I absolutely grew up on Bill Cosby. Um,
Same.
yeah,
Yeah.
that it was like, well, it was Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids were on TV. I could get reruns of I Spy, and then I had a couple of albums, and I knew those albums backwards and forwards.
Mhm.
And I had other friends who had other ones, and we shared those. As I got a little older, Steve Martin hit,
Mhm.
and that is the first comedy album I ever bought for myself.
Okay.
That it was Steve Martin's Wild and Crazy Guy, and then I went out and got Let's Get Small after
Uh-huh.
that, so I got them a little out of order. I had grown up a lot on Bob Newhart, and
Good
he,
stuff.
people will say, "Oh, he's got this stutter, and that's the thing." And I'm like, I find that with him, it's the pause,
Mhm.
it's the this is a bit the same for Jack Benny. A number of people have talked about this over the years, that Jack Benny, everybody knew Jack Benny. They knew his character, that he was a cheapskate, and that
Mhm.
he didn't want to spend any money. He was a penny pincher. And so he does the bit where he leaves the theater and he gets mugged, and the guy holds a gun up to him and says, "Your money or your life." And he sits there he doesn't
Mhm.
respond, and it's quiet, and people are chuckling because there's a little tension there.
Yeah.
And the mugger goes, "So which is it?" "I'm thinking." And the story that I've heard, it was 9 minutes of laughter,
Yeah.
where he didn't have to say another word,
Yep.
because they just knew his character. And
Mhm.
I would say that Bob Newhart had some of that, in that you knew who he was, you knew what to expect from him. He could take those pauses and just let them speak for themselves.
Mhm.
Um, and so when I do material, there are times when I take pauses that I think, "Oh gosh, this pause is so long. It's so long." It's not. It never is.
Uh-huh.
I watch the video later and it's like, it's I
Yeah.
still got to take longer time there to let the audience get it first.
Yeah.
So I love it when the audience figures out where I'm going, as I give them the last piece of information.
Yep.
And then I always say the thing, or I will say something completely other.
Mhm.
So there's a thing that I'm doing right now where I talk about, my name is not complicated, but people misspell Brian, but they switch the vowels around and it comes out like
Yeah.
a piece of the human anatomy. It's brain.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so I talk about, I do this for other people. I respond and spell their names wrong. So I call him liver and I call him spleen.
Uh-huh.
And then my friend Bob, I spell his name with two O's. And I wait. And you have to wait long enough for the audience to chuckle, to
Yeah.
get the, "Oh, yeah, we know what word he's spelling."
Uh-huh.
And then I say, "I call him Bobo." And so I never say BOOB.
Uh-huh.
Which is where they went. Um, I never have to do that. I take that pause. And so that's part of it, is some of the old vaudeville comics, and then Bob Newhart kind of inheriting that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Bill Cosby, Steve Martin really introduced me to the absurd.
Yeah.
Um, and then so when I took his internet class, his master class, the idea that he talked about his character, his voice was a guy who thought he was in show business
Yeah.
and was doing all the things he could to make it look like he was legitimately in show business, but he had this goofy, twisted perspective of what show business was.
Yeah.
And then everything was within that context. And so, I look for those kinds of things. I look for, I've never been a junior high vice principal, but I look for those kinds of things where people have their mind made up about who I am and what I do and that kind of
Mhm.
thing. And then I try to bring the I'm a horrible person to that, and take them somewhere else.
Yeah.
Um,
See, now that's a really cool dichotomy, because you do all these, these cleaner puns. Yeah.
there you go.
And it's really great branding, and you punctuate it with "I'm a horrible
Yeah.
person," and you're in your act, you do it too, and I really enjoy how you do that. And how did you come up with that?
Um, it was one of those things that around the house and around friends and so on, I'm the one who says the dark thing.
Mhm.
We're presented with a situation, and then my brain goes in this terrible direction, and I would kind of do it as an apology.
Mhm.
Um, so a favorite one that I'm doing right now is that I've always wanted to be a performer. I studied to be a ventriloquist when I was a little kid, and I was good at the voices. I've always been good at voices, but I was bad at the puppetry.
Mhm.
So I just told everybody the dummy was paralyzed. And so, I mean, that's not terribly dark. It's,
Uh-huh.
it's off color, it's obtuse, it's absurd.
Right.
Um, but um, but then I follow that with I'm a horrible person. So
Yeah.
it's really more of an apology.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what I just said. So it's that. And then as I did it, and then I've kind of gone on different stints of like I'll do a whole run of puns, and I haven't
Mhm.
done that in a couple of years, but
Mhm.
I enjoy puns a lot. It's a lot of fun, and they're the kind of things that just every day walking around, those things just pop into my
Yeah.
head, so they
Right.
come out a lot. Um, so as that happens, um, it does come out with like that kind of apologetic I'm a horrible person. And
Yeah.
and it just came out like that one time with it was and I couldn't even tell you the first time it happened, but with friends or family and then and then as I started doing material and finding myself where I kind of needed to have that um just to kind of explain I know what I've just said
Mhm.
and I'm not proud of it.
Yeah.
And then that came out and then it was like, well, I'm gonna make some stickers and some buttons and and hand those out. And so I did a test with, and I got to reach up here and grab the other one. So I also have, so my last name is Atkinson, and so I use the at symbol quite a
Oh,
bit
okay.
in things that
Yeah.
I do. And so I tried to, hold that up as a like, oh, hey, here's two choices. And I couldn't give those away
Uh-huh.
because I got a bunch of those.
Yeah.
But I've done a reorder on the I'm a horrible person
Yeah.
merch with stickers and buttons and magnets and things like that. They're just little things just to give away. Got my website on it so people can find me later.
Yeah.
But that's I mean, it's obviously that's the thing that people do. And then one of the things that Steve Martin said in his class is, don't beat that to death. Don't
Yeah.
if you have a catchphrase, if you have a thing that you do regularly, if there's a particular style of joke or something, don't. It's like Jim Gaffigan doesn't walk out on stage and talk about hot pockets
Right. Right.
out of the gate. No, of
Mhm.
course not. Brian Regan doesn't jump out on stage and talk about the instructions for toasting a Pop Tart.
Yeah.
Um, th- that's not how they start. Um,
Mhm.
when they do an encore, when they do a closer, when they do something like that, or they'll
Yeah.
sneak it in because it's very popular because people love it.
Mhm.
And of course, you got to do that. Um, but when it comes to that kind of thing, don't make that your whole act.
Right.
So if I if I'm doing 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I'm only going to say that once.
Mhm.
If I'm doing 20 to 30 minutes, I might do a little callback to it, and then if I'm doing a 45-minute headline set or something, I'll refer back to it once. It'll be
Mhm.
once and then a later
Right.
thing, and so on. And I've gotten some good advice. There was a while there I was trying out saying that's why I'm a horrible person,
Mhm.
and that doesn't work as well. I've said
Mhm.
it kind of accidentally,
Mhm.
and a comic who was at an event I was at, Marty Simpson. So yeah, don't say it that way because then people start to make up their mind whether you are or not. I'll be the
Yeah.
judge of that.
Right.
And yeah, so that was he just explained it to me in a way that made a lot of sense. Like, that's why it doesn't work. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And so then
It
I've
comes
resolved
it
to,
really comes off as when you just say, "I'm a horrible
yeah,
person," it comes off as an inner voice type thing, like you are realizing it
yep.
yourself, and that's why it hits better.
That's all I
Yeah,
want. Yeah, you
yeah,
got it.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's and obviously beautiful branding. I wish that I could come up with branding in such a fashion because so far nothing's worked. But
Well,
except for
you either
it's a
get an
good one.
amazing podcast or branding,
Yeah.
and one or
Yeah,
the
there you
other.
go.
I don't know.
There you
So,
go.
yeah.
Um, so one of the reasons I wanted to talk was, comedians, first of all, we're a tribe. No matter what kind of comedian you are,
Right?
we are, we're here for each other, and there is a competitiveness about it, but in the end, it's all of us in a room and the audience in a different room because we're just different people.
Yeah.
And I like to use the term outlier because that's what I feel that most comedians are. They're a little bit outside the norms of society, and they've
What's
got
wrong with us?
yeah, we've got something to prove and all that. And you've been in a and I the other thing is I want to protect the people that I
Yes.
love and the people that are in this business. And you found yourself in a situation not too long ago that afforded some great comedy, but also ended in some tragic
Yeah,
events.
for
And
sure.
I do want to talk about that because it's something that is very alive today and something that is scaring me to death. So I and we talked about this beforehand. We're not going to talk about who, where, why, and anything
Mhm.
like that. But I do want to talk about the events that happened
Yeah.
and also how it's affected you because it
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll just reiterate something you said there. So I've been very careful. I am not naming the comedy show that I attended, that event. I'm not naming the people who are involved in it. I don't want to talk about the club where it happened. I don't want to
Mhm,
talk about any of those things. Um, the thing that I want to talk about is the what happened. I
mhm,
don't want anyone to be blamed. I don't want anyone to feel ashamed, or people to shame them, or try to say, well, this person was wrong, so I'm gonna hurt them in some way. I've had a
mhm.
number of comics come up to me and says, hey, where did this start? Because I want to make sure that person never works again. I'm like, that is not what we're doing.
Yeah.
That can't be it. So I was at a comedy event. It was a 3-day event, and it, it was mid-July. I've been looking forward to it. It had been canceled previously, and then kind of brought back around because cases were down for COVID, and vaccinations were surging. We were doing really well, um, and we all felt we're like, hey, we're vaccinated, we're bulletproof, we're going to be fine. So we're all going to go to this thing. So we had 35 comics, and then during the course of the few days, we had 5 or 8 somewhere in there, other staff people who were running it or hosting or doing other things, and as so we I'm just calling it randomly 40 people who were involved. And after the event, within a couple of days, people started having your classic COVID symptoms: a little bit of a
Mhm,
sore throat, uh, headache, a lightweight fever, some sinus things, so on. And that includes me. And I had been
mhm.
vaccinated in March. I had 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine, and the thing that I didn't think through carefully enough and understand that I want everybody to really grab hold of is having the vaccine does not mean you're not going to get sick. Having the vaccine is kind of like having a seatbelt on your car. You put the seatbelt on. If you're in an accident, it helps it from becoming a really serious accident, serious injuries. But it doesn't prevent car accidents. There's nothing
Mhm.
about that seatbelt that's out there, keeping the car accidents away from you.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. Um, and I forgot that, and
Mhm,
we had all gone in there, with at least the sense of, hey, we're all vaccinated, it's all going to be fine. And one of the people showed up with some symptoms, and they were wearing a mask, and said, as we kind of went around the room and introduced ourselves, he said, I'm sorry about this. I'm just getting over a flu, and so I'm wearing a mask. And then it wasn't too long later that he took off that mask and so on. And at that moment, I should have thought, wait a minute, if it's influenza, the flu,
Right.
that's still very contagious and deadly.
Yeah.
I don't need to be around that. I had a flu vaccine in the fall, but that's faded. I'm kind of due for another one.
Mhm.
And I should have, at the very least, worn a mask,
Mm.
so that if I did get any of the virus inside of me, that it would be less likely that I would expel it.
Mhm.
So that kind of thing. And then, an old friend of mine from grade school just popped on here. Mark Mitchell said, if wearing a seatbelt makes you drive your car more recklessly, you're not using it right. And you're absolutely right. I was not using my vaccine correctly. And, I should have not only used my seatbelt, but I should have also, been driving more carefully
Mhm.
and so on, and not speeding and so on, which is, by the way, for any law enforcement officers who are listening, that is how I drive. Anyway, uh, so I uh, I didn't do the right thing myself, and so I
Mhm.
was one of the vaccinated people who got sick. There were some unvaccinated people there as well who got sick, and the way that uh, I got information from a lot of different people who were at the event over the next few days and then weeks and so on. And the count that we came up with was that there were 5 people who went to the hospital or under a doctor's care, and they were on a variety of different breathing apparatuses for a period of time, different
Mhm.
periods of time, different people, and so on. And uh, one of the guys had started getting symptoms about the second day of the event, and then he isolated himself and got out of there and didn't attend the rest of it. And he absolutely did the right thing.
Mhm.
Um, as soon as he realized he was not feeling right, that he was sick, he took himself out of the equation. He ended up in the hospital. He ended up on a ventilator, and he's okay now. I just checked in with him the other day. He's
Mhm.
he's back at work. He's in good shape.
Mhm.
I missed, basically, I'd gone on vacation to to do this event, taken a couple of days of vacation, and I got back to work, and then I um, got home that night, and that evening I started having some symptoms. So that was on a Tuesday night. I started having just a little, oh, my glands are swollen, a little sore throat. The next
Mhm.
morning I woke up and I'm like, nope, I am not going to work. This could be anything.
Mhm.
And I said, I know I was just in a room of 35, 40 people for 3 or 4 days, and there was somebody who had some symptoms, and we weren't masking. And now I'm thinking, okay, well, let me make sure that I'm doing the right thing now. So I called in sick for that Wednesday. Um, got a hold of my doctor's office, who pointed me to a COVID testing thing. They said, we want to wait one more day before you get the test, so don't come in now. You're going to come in tomorrow morning. Thursday, I did the drive up. I spit in a cup. I didn't even have to have the swab in the nose.
Mhm.
And then uh, later on Thursday, I was just feeling sicker and sicker. My temperature was starting to creep up, and on Friday, um, mid morning, I got the call and the text and the email and then another phone call and so on from everybody to let me know, hey, you tested positive for COVID-19,
Mhm.
which is the illness that the coronavirus causes. And so once I knew that, then for sure, Holly, my wife, and I had already started isolating from each other,
Mhm.
um, which she says was terrible. So it's very kind of her to say that. Um, so I appreciate her saying so. But uh, we slept in different rooms. We avoided being in the same space without masks and so on.
Mhm.
And so from the time my symptoms first appeared to the time that my symptoms were really gone was about 10 days, which oddly is the period of isolation that they wanted me to go through.
Mhm.
And and into the second or third day, sense of smell disappeared, and so it's been 3 weeks and some change since my symptoms have been gone. Except that the sense of smell is still not where it used to be. My wife made some dinner tonight, and I could smell it to some degree, but I know I wasn't, really appreciating. I can smell my coffee if I hold it, kind of right up there.
Yeah.
But I don't smell things the way I used to. On Saturday, I was opening a door, checking it, locking it, and as I did, oh, there's a skunk outside. I'm like, oh, hey, I can smell the skunk. Great, that's back. So that was my experience with having COVID myself. A lot of people checked in on me and made sure, but that's when it started to be like, oh yeah, I'm also sick. Oh, I'm also sick. I'm also sick. This person is sick. This person went to the hospital. This, so on. And at the after a couple of weeks of that and finding out that there were some unvaccinated people who were in the hospital on ventilators and other devices. CPAP is one of the things they use, which I sleep with every night anyway, because I'm incapable of breathing without help, apparently. At night, though, just at night, so it's
Yeah.
but they we got horrible news that one of the guys had passed away due to COVID. Been in the hospital, and they had him on a ventilator, and his family lost their dad, lost their husband. He was a teacher. His students lost their teacher this, that close to the school year starting up again. So that was terribly tragic. He happened to be the guy who was sitting next to me for most of the event. So I'd gotten to know him. We had a couple of meals together. I really liked him. I was looking forward to getting to know him and finding ways that we could, do shows together somewhere from different parts of the country, what have you. Talking to him about his material, him talking to me about mine. It just really the beginnings of what I was hoping was going to be a really great friendship. So he passed away. As we're doing this, I guess it was 3 weeks ago today. And then we were kind of on prayer watch for the other people who were still in the hospital and still in the ICU and in different situations. And I told you that one guy, he got out of the hospital. He's doing just fine now. But there were two other people who were in the hospital, and they both died on Friday. So it's just a few days ago that happened. I did a lot of social media posts about this along the way. So if you were following along with what I was doing on social media, you'd see a lot of that stuff. You'd see that on Friday night, I posted, we've had, the second death. And then Saturday morning, I said, make that 3 because I hadn't heard that the third guy had also passed away. So just running some numbers briefly, and I'm not a math guy, but so you had about 40 people. We had a total of 20 people who got sick who were at the event. So straight up 50%, give or take, because, like I said, there was 35 comics and then, a handful of other people. So that was up and down a little bit for different days. And then as we look further into that, we say, okay, of those 20 people, there were 15 people who were vaccinated who got sick. And again, I say, yeah, it's seatbelt. It's not a bulletproof vest. And then there were the 5 people who were unvaccinated who got sick, and 3 of them died.
Wow.
So if I can be clear again, I don't want to point fingers. I don't want to blame anybody. I'm not going to name people. I'm not going to name the event. I'm not going to do that stuff. I'm just going to use this as saying this happened. These are the facts, and we need to step up our game. As comics, I have a friend that I know. I've been singing in a competitive chorus for the last few years.
Hmm.
And one of the guys who sings in it, he's an epidemiologist. And so he's been advising the chorus. And I made a little video for him to share with the chorus board last week. And
Uh-huh.
they reversed a policy that they had. They were going to, be a little lax about vaccinations and testing and masking
Mm.
and that kind of stuff. And I had the story of one person died, and thankfully that one person dying was enough so that they changed their policy and have made it so that, like, well, when we rehearse, you're required to be vaccinated if you're and then even if you are, then you're going to be masked. We're going to be distanced for our
Mm.
rehearsals. We're going to go outside as much as possible, but we're not going to play around with this anymore.
Mhm.
And so I'm very thankful that they made that decision. And then I'm in a situation right now where I still want to be able to do comedy. I went to a show this weekend and performed there. I estimate there were 60 people ish, 50, 60 people in the audience, and a handful of comics. And I was the only person in the room wearing a mask.
Mhm.
And that is not meant as judgment toward anybody who was there. It's just that, okay, a number of people came up to me and said, "Hey, I saw what you wrote. Thank you for doing that." And, like, I want you to take action. I want
Yeah.
you to not only make sure you're vaccinated. Thank you for getting vaccinated. But I also want you to wear a mask. Um,
Mhm.
and and right now the CDC has recommended that a mask indoors if you're in anything resembling group of people or strangers or so on. So that would include the grocery store. It would include offices, that kinds of thing.
Mhm.
Um, and then they're encouraging mask wearing outside. And I may not have all those words right as we're doing this right now today, but that was
Mhm.
the last thing that I read. And masks work. We know that they do because, I mean, prior to getting COVID, I hadn't had a cold in a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I went to the grocery store once or twice a week.
Yeah.
I didn't do the delivery thing. I said, well, it's this person's going to have to run around the store and get all my stuff and touch all my stuff and breathe on my stuff, or I'm going to do it. And
Yeah.
I don't need to risk somebody else's life to get my
Yeah.
groceries. I'm going to do it. And again, not judgment. That's just how I felt in it. I also needed to get out of the house.
Yeah.
But masks work. We're
Yeah.
not so concerned anymore about the touching of surfaces and transmitting through surfaces and things. Yeah, don't shake somebody's hand and then touch your face. That's probably a bad idea.
Mhm.
Make sure you're washing your hands. Make sure you're doing that. But wearing a mask is one of the most important things you can do. And then I just want to encourage anybody who's in groups. So the comedians that we know and love, churches. If you have an office where I'm picturing things like call centers and stuff like that, where,
Mhm.
like, unless there's extraordinarily good ventilation, you can't create enough distance in a space like that.
Right.
With the chorus that I sang with and with comedians, I talk about what we're doing in that room is happy coughing.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
it's it's the same function as coughing. We're expelling
Yeah.
air, and with laughing more so because it's that ha ha ha. It's
Yeah.
it's rhythmic like
Mhm.
that. It's that kind of thing, and it's always surprising, which is great. Love that. When it comes to singing, it's extended
Mhm.
happy coughing. So you're really expelling the virus
Mhm.
particles that are in your passageways. And then after you've happy coughed, you're deeply inhaling to either get another breath to sing or to recover from that great laugh that you just had.
Mhm.
And then for churches, if you're singing in church, there you are. That's the happy coughing there. You got a little amen corner somewhere.
Mhm.
That's another kind of happy coughing. So I I just want to encourage everybody, make sure you're vaccinated, mask up, um, stay home if you can, but I'm not asking anybody to isolate unless, wait for it, you've got some symptoms, and if
Right.
you think that it's just a flu, hey, I just want to point out that influenza, the flu, also has a vaccine that you
Mhm.
can get on the regular. So recommend
Mhm.
that. And influenza can kill people, and it kills people every year. So
Right.
let's think about that as well. If you think it's just something else,
Mhm.
assume.
Right.
If you're prone to allergies, assume it's not that. Go
Mhm.
take your allergy pill, stay isolated for a little while. Hey, do your symptoms go away when you took your allergy stuff? Yeah, great, fine.
Yeah.
No, get tested. Talk
Yeah.
to your doctor. Um, uh, for God's sake, don't read stuff on the internet. 'Cause that is that's just not going to help.
No. Yeah.
There's legitimate news sources out there. Reuters News, the AP, things coming directly from the CDC. When you go to the source, but
Mhm.
I want to offend everybody and nobody kind of at the same time.
Right.
So
Right.
if it's a news organization with 3 letters or more, it's likely got a perspective,
Yeah.
and it can push you one way or the other. Let's just go to the sources
Mhm.
to get our information. And then if you're comfortable with another organization on top of that, as long as they're not contradicting what the CDC says and they're not contradicting what you're seeing in legitimate news sources, then I think you're fine. But
Mhm.
if they're just based, and there's on both sides of the red and blue and the left and right, so on there's plenty of both of that. Um, but just let's let's all get back to um, being loving to each other, and especially people who are church going folk. The thing that you were asked to do is love God and love people, and loving people is done by protecting them. And so that means you put on a mask and you get vaccinated.
Mhm.
And when you've done both of those things, you can say, "Yeah, I I was loving to people
Mhm.
in those ways." But trying to talk people out of behaviors that can get them killed, not loving. So
Mhm.
let's knock that off.
Right.
Um, so yeah, yeah. Did I offend everybody yet? No, just some people. Okay, I got more.
Well, I do appreciate you sharing this, and there is nothing funny about it, and this doesn't really have to do with the art of stand-up comedy. However, we're in a situation. There's actually two situations. We've got a lot of people who want to perform, and we
Yep.
got a lot of people who are starved for performance, and that's
Hmm.
in comedy, music,
Yeah.
going to church,
Yeah.
any of those things. They're starved for that human contact, and that's what's filling up the clubs. That's what's filling up the churches, and
Absolutely.
there is no. I guess there's no truer control group than the one you were in.
Yeah.
And so, taking it back, the people who were vaccinated did not get hospitalized. The people who were got hospitalized, and some of them passed away.
Exactly.
So, but that doesn't mean that the people who are vaccinated cannot carry that virus to somebody else. So the Delta
Precisely.
variant and all that. So that means if I get the virus and I give it to somebody that is either not vaccinated or vaccinated, and it ends up hospitalizing them or killing them, then my not acting properly was part of that.
Yeah.
So, I just hope that everybody that listens takes this in the spirit that it was given. That both Brian and I have seen and have gone through this, and mostly Brian, but we just don't want people to die, and we don't
Yeah.
want we, we you can be vax, anti-vax, and mask, anti-mask, but it just I think that his particular story shows that in that particular group that um, the people get it after they're vaxxed, and people can transmit it after they're vaxxed, and people who aren't vaxxed are
Hmm.
very prone to being very seriously ill and possibly
Yeah.
passing away. So I appreciate you going through that. I know it's painful. I feel like it's a public service that really needs to be said, because I feel like we're getting into a situation where it could be really, really bad if we don't take some measures. And
Yeah.
like I told you before we started, I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm not a young guy, and I also don't want to take that responsibility of passing it on to somebody that could possibly really get hurt from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for stating all that so clearly. I do want to also say that that just some recent statistics I've seen is that um, the people who are vaccinated do end up in the hospital. It's not that it
Mhm.
doesn't happen; it's just far
Right,
less likely.
right.
So it's a small percentage, but it does happen. People who are half vaccinated. They've had their first, and then they get sick after their first one.
Mhm.
They're more likely than somebody who's fully vaccinated. But even with that one shot, you're far less likely than people who are not vaccinated at all. Um,
Mhm.
and I'm just going to go ahead and read my old childhood friend Mark got on here said comics are the albino rabbit of COVID. Is that what you're saying? And say, Mark, thank you very much. I don't know that you needed to use the term albino. Um,
With a couple white guys
come
on the
on,
screen.
come on, not that pale. Yeah, um, yeah. The control group. Hey, let's put all these comics in a room and see who dies. That is not what we're after.
Right.
We're not aiming for that.
Yeah.
And we don't need to be that group for the rest of the country either.
Right.
So we need to. I would I would love to see comedians um, getting out there and performing and making sure that they are behaving properly. Um, and yeah, and so if you are sorry, my friend Mark just keeps
I
throwing
know.
stuff in
I'm
here,
watching it
and
now.
he made a joke that I've made among other comics, and it's like, yeah, did you could really say that my material killed, but it was yeah. I'm never comfortable using that term with comedy anyway, but it's still so important. I would like to see comedians being examples of look, we
Mhm.
come from all kinds of different backgrounds, we come from all different perspectives on life, but if we want to get back to work and performing, um, I got a friend who is about to get on a cruise ship to do comedy,
Yeah.
and like, wow, I don't. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna wear a mask the whole time. You're vaccinated. You're gonna get tested before you get on the ship. My heart just breaks for what he's gonna be up against, and part of it is it's like you got to understand that most comedians make next to nothing when it comes to
Mhm.
money.
Right.
Um, uh, I certainly couldn't make a living doing comedy and voiceover work together. A few $1,000s a year between those two endeavors for me. For some comics, it's far less than that. They get a couple
Mhm.
$100 here and there, that kind of thing. But even comics with albums and who are working and stuff, they're they're not out there making six figures, and they're self-employed, so they got to take care of all their own everything, insurance and so on, that kind of gets added into to people who have
Mhm.
day jobs like we do.
Mhm.
But um, they feel like they don't have a choice. They feel like
Mhm.
if I'm going to continue to have a career, if I'm going to continue to be able to feed myself and live indoors, the two luxuries to which I've grown accustomed, I have to do this. I
Mhm.
have to go to this show. I have to put on this show. I have to carry this through, complete the booking that I made. And likewise, club owners and club bookers are like, I have to start getting butts in the seats. Otherwise, we will not have a club here in a
Mhm.
short period of time. They're all feeling like they don't have a choice. And I'm not for a minute going to say, "Oh no, no, you have a choice." What I am saying is you can take more precautions than what we have been, and let's be examples to the rest of the world of if you're going to get back in a room, if you're going to get back on stage, here are some things that we know are helpful, so let's do them.
Mhm.
Let's
Yeah.
do them as aggressively as possible. So you got a room full of people sitting there with masks on their faces. Oh no, how awful! They still laugh.
Yeah.
It doesn't keep them from laughing. It doesn't keep them from breathing. Um,
Mhm.
you as a comic, there's a lot of your facial things. So when I got on stage over the weekend, I wore my mask until I took the steps up to the stage. I took it off. I put it in my pocket. I did my time, and then I put it back on before I stepped down into the crowd. And I went back to where I was sitting
Mhm.
to make sure that I was as absolutely protected as possible. Um, but even taking that mask off while I was performing, I knew that I was taking a risk.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that's what I'm hoping that people will get out of the experience that I've been sharing. Been sharing this now for a few weeks, both
Mhm.
just as it was happening to me at the time, and then since then, kind of what's happened. Um, I I believe that we don't have anybody else out of the group that was together there that is still sick, that is still struggling or in the hospital. I think it
Mhm.
everybody's kind of accounted for, but we lost three. We
Yeah.
lost three people out of 40. Or if you want to say we lost three out of the 20 who got sick, or you want
Mhm.
to say we lost three out of the five who were unvaccinated.
Mhm.
Um, there's no stat there that is right. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Mark asked if, the masking and status was brought up during the,
Yeah, during the event.
pre-show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was not.
Okay.
Prior to that, the idea of um, I was under the impression that we were all supposed to be vaccinated.
Mhm.
Um, there wasn't a hey, you have to show proof of vaccination. Nobody wants to do that. There's a lot of people who are against that showing proof. And in
Mhm.
mid-July, um, there was no motivation for people wanting to do that.
Mhm.
Um, I'm a proponent of when I was a kid, I had to show proof of vaccination to go to school,
Mhm.
and we had measles and mumps and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, diphtheria,
Yeah.
which is just a fun word to say. Um, I wish I could have gotten vaccinated against diarrhea, but they didn't have that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I got my COVID vaccination in March, a second shot at the end of March, and yeah, and then in May I got a shingles vaccination because I'd had chickenpox as a kid, and so
Yeah.
there's that virus lying dormant in my body, and I don't want to get shingles. So
Yeah.
I took an extra step there. I got a flu shot in the fall, and I'm a horrible person, but
Yeah.
for the most part, I'm I'm doing okay. Um, so I'm a proponent of let's all get vaccinated. It's been required for my entire lifetime in a variety of different situations, school, military service, certain jobs, things like that.
Mhm.
I absolutely in favor of that. But in all honesty, if you're eligible, if you don't have you're not immunocompromised, if your doctor has not said, hey, with your health situation, you should not get vaccinated. Until that happens, I've got no patience for people who are like, they think of it, they're going to get a chip, or I don't know what's in it, or things like
Mhm.
that. There's
Yeah.
just there's that's just a bunch of nonsense, and
Mhm.
I won't listen to it because
Right.
that's just stupid.
That's silly.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're running into you having to do something here pretty quick. So I want to make sure that we get a couple things in. First off, not
Absolutely.
only do you have the Clean Comedy Time show, but you are part of the Clean Comedy Time podcast. I believe you either did a chart thing or won an award or something for that. Can you
Yeah.
elaborate on that?
Yeah, the Clean Comedy Time podcast. So first of all, you can find Clean Comedy Time at cleancomedytime.com. You can find us on social media as well, but the easiest thing is go to the website, and from there you can get lots of more information.
Mhm.
When we have shows booked, we will have them there on the shows page. But the podcast has its own page on the website, and we usually go to a little intermittent over the summer, but we aim at every 2 weeks on Mondays,
Mhm.
and it's a real fun podcast. We usually talk to a comic who has been on one of our shows, or as we ran into COVID and had to cancel some shows, we started talking to comics who were scheduled for shows. Uh, and so coming up this Monday, we're going to be talking to one of the guys who was scheduled, but we had to postpone his show. And as we've done that, we're about a year and a half into that show. We in January we hit a milestone in the number of downloads, where we hit 10,000 downloads. So we felt really proud about that.
Mhm.
And then in the last 7 months, we've almost tripled that. So
Yeah.
so that's been exciting. And in the process, then just with the rankings that come from Apple Podcasts, we're number one in Fiji in the category of stand-up comedy.
Excellent.
And we have had that multiple times over the last several months.
Uh,
We're very excited about that. So everybody in Fiji, thank you for making Clean Comedy Time your number one stand-up comedy podcast.
uh,
And then in the United States, we cracked the top 10 a few weeks ago, and
wow.
we are kind of flipping back and forth between number 6 and number 8, and that kind of thing,
Uh-huh.
right in there. And that two different categories. One is stand-up comedy podcasts, and then the other is a stand-up comedy podcast episode. And then the episodes were tracking nicely as well in that top 10 category.
Mm,
And then Canada has been creeping up as well, and we broke into the top 10 there recently as well. And so we're Aaron and I are both very excited about that. That's a lot of fun,
that's
to know that people are listening and knowing people are getting out of it a lot of stuff out of it. The podcast runs with first a conversation with the comic. We talk about the funny,
uh,
and then we take a little break and we come back. We talk about things that are going really well,
mhm,
and then we pause and then talk about things that are going not so well, things that people are struggling with. So we get
mhm,
pretty real, pretty deep, and some people don't get as in depth into that, but
mhm,
a lot of people do. So we when we talk to comedians, we talk about the good, the bad, and the funny.
mhm.
And
And
yeah,
yeah, congratulations on that because I know how hard it is to have an independent podcast
yeah,
that has just all you got to work with is your content. And you don't have any fame or anybody. Jimmy Fallon's not talking about you or anything like that. I know how hard it is to gain any traction at
yeah,
all. So
yeah.
congratulations on that. And it's a good podcast. I listened to it after I interviewed Aaron way back in sometime last year. Um,
In
and
the before times.
Yeah. And I just I always like when an independent podcast does
Hmm.
something well because it's hard for us
Yeah,
and yet what we do is really our passion. It's not just a
yeah.
sideline. So
Yeah.
it's really
And we
nice
do
that
it
you guys
because it's
did that.
fun. We're having a
Yeah.
good time doing it. For those of us who enjoy talking to other people, Scott, it's great talking to you. It's always great, talking with our guests over time. When I was a guest on your other show, which is not the
Uh-huh.
podcast,
Right.
um,
It's very
uh,
different.
yeah, very different. Dean Martin's in it. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So make sure you go there as well. But it was just so much fun talking with everybody.
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate enough to be a guest on a few other podcasts over the last year and a half, just because that's all we had. So
Yeah.
let's make a podcast.
Yeah.
And it's been terrific fun to
Right.
talk to people about almost anything.
Right.
And then you get reunited with the guy that you went to kindergarten with, and we're in the YMCA Indian Guides, my old friend Mark, who I'm
Yeah.
just going to read his last comment here. He said, it's certainly easier to not talk about it. So my respect to you for not taking the easy path. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mark. That's very kind
Thanks,
of you to
Mark.
say. So yeah, I appreciate you being here. And I don't know if Matt Harper is still listening or anything, but he is for sure heard me say for sure 4 or 5 times while I've been on the show,
For
which
sure.
I've been listening to his podcast. I'm going to go ahead and plug. That's called Another Episode. They take a
Oh,
deep
okay.
dive into the movies that
All right.
shaped their lives. Really fun podcast. Lots of cursing, and but really, I've been on the guest on that a couple of times. And I hope that as Matt hears this, he understands that I have fixed the audio problems that made me come across very soft and quiet in my podcasting with him, so he knows. Yeah. So there you go.
One of my the thing I have most pride about doing the podcast and the talk show is the connections that I've made between other
Yeah.
people. It's really nice to see, like a Showtime David Scott comment on something that you did or something like that. It's just the connections that are made that go way beyond the interaction we had on the show, and people click and people don't click, and a lot of the folks that I've introduced uh, by the way are clicking, so it's really nice.
Yeah.
So as far as seeing where we can find you on
Yeah.
social media, your website and
Mhm.
stuff like that, why don't you give that to us so you can get back to your life?
Absolutely. So I put it right here in my name. So
All
I'm
right.
Brian Atkinson. And so there it is, Brian Atkinson. And then you can find me at Brian A. Comedian. And you
Uh,
can find it at Brian A. Comedian on Facebook, on Instagram, and Twitter.
okay.
So it's easy. And I sometimes I post the same stuff on all of those. Sometimes I don't. I'll post little things here and there.
Mhm.
Um, I think I am up to 3 Twitter followers now.
Ooh.
Not sure about that number. I haven't looked at it lately, but I think it's up like that. My Brian A. Comedian Facebook page. Every once in a while somebody will like something. That's always nice. And then if you really, really want to get into it with me, you can also follow on Facebook the page I'm a Horrible Person. So that's
Uh,
got its own page, and that's a rather focused thing. But
yeah.
then you can also find brianacomedian.com, my website, where you can find where I'll be performing, links to lots of things like that. I talk a little bit on there about why clean comedy and what makes it clean and
Mhm.
what inspired me to do that. Some of the things I talked about today and some of the things I did not talk about today. So there's more content available there. Plus, there's a videos page. I've got a fun playlist on YouTube that you can go through that's got some recent comedy clips on there. So yeah, please feel free to reach out. There's a contact me page there on the website, or hit me up on any of the socials.
uh,
Happy to talk to people.
it's great to watch your videos on the site because the Brian Brain bit
Oh,
hit way better on one of them than the other one, and
right,
it's because of the
right.
pause. Yeah, yeah,
It is.
yeah. As a comedian, you're always critiquing everything you see,
Thank you.
and I saw the one where it didn't hit as well
Yep.
first, and I saw the one where it hit really well. I'm like, it was like maybe a half second more pause, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can point comedians. We love to point at the audience.
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
we like to say, "Oh, well, that audience was like," no,
Yep.
it's never the audience.
No.
It's, did you make yourself relatable to that audience? Did you
Yeah.
bring them what they came to see? Did you
Yeah.
bring them the laughs? Did you
Yeah.
provide that service? I had a comic club owner booker say, it is not your job to get laughs. It is your job to bring them.
Right. Yeah.
You know, if people don't laugh, you know, there can be shared responsibility, but it's your job to bring them. So
Yeah.
so bring them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. This has been
Anytime.
very educational, and I
Yeah.
think I'll probably cut some sound clips out just for to share with everybody so that we can get everybody safe.
Oh, great. Thank you,
Yeah.
Scott. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been entirely my pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.